Welcome, everybody, to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host, Trey Holiday, and we got another lineup for you today, this Thursday, getting through this week as best we can. For those of you who stuck with us yesterday in our long live stream, we totally appreciate that. Clearly, you know, me and Big O got to stay on top of it. Right, Big O?
Yeah, what's up, Trey Holiday?
Hey.
First of all, there could be chaos in D.C., people rushing the governor's house in Olympia, but all that comes secondary to like, man, look at you in the converted sweatshirt, coordinated here, the black and gold. You know, it's rare that we break out the gold ones.
Yeah.
We got a few different colorways. Matter of fact, we got a bunch of colorways we've never broken out because I'm just so like whatever on this, but I think the gold's one of our best ones.
Absolutely. You know, I had to go for the gold, man. I'm always reaching for the gold. So thank you, my friend. It's always good to be in my converged gear.
Yeah. Welcome back. You know, it was the morning show yesterday. It was 3 hours and 28 minutes on air. I mean, it went fast because the news was constantly breaking. We're going to cover a lot of stuff today. I think the first thing though is that producer Nikki Barron, and I saw it was at 6 o'clock this morning. Producer Nikki Barron kind of put a tweet out there to the general public like, "How you feeling today?" Right? Because, you know, everybody, no matter what, I mean, it's one of these things that impacts, I guess, all Americans who are paying attention. No matter where you are on these issues, is what we saw yesterday. You have some kind of opinion or you feel some kind of way about it. Just a few here. Brian Callanan, one of your big fans. Yeah, from Brian Callanan from the Seattle channel said, "I'm concerned about the future of our country, not because we have an embarrassing, dangerous POTUS." And he's clapping, huh? And Jackals like, oh, okay. I thought he said Jack. Like Josh Hawley raising his fist to protesters, but because 2021 is not a magic day that somehow will make all the Trumpians disappear.
Right.
Brian Callanan. Karen Johnstone, "I'm thoughtful, weary, grateful for another day. Seeing you check in with folks at 6:11 a.m. Nikki Barron be up. I don't know if she ever sleeps. Reminds me to be thoughtful of how I show up. Appreciate strength, positive example of presence." I got a good one here from Vincent, Friday_living. He just says tired. And there's one more from Michael Mouton. And Michelle. Sorry, Michelle. She says exhausted. I think a lot of people are exhausted this morning.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, yesterday I think took a bit of an emotional toll on so many of us. To be honest, it was a lot to take in, and I think that we've had ideas about how this was going to play out. People have been speculating it. People have been making comments. People have been predicting certain things, and I think that Brian's absolutely right when we think about January 20th and this transition of power. It is clear that it's going to be met with some resistance. I mean, we can guarantee that, just like we knew that yesterday was going to be met with resistance. We didn't know how much, but the ideas around, hey, that being some magical day that just smooths everything out, I don't see that either. So I think Brian's definitely right on this one.
Right. And well, the president, and I was up, I already got a problem sleeping, and I'm already like a politics and news junkie. So I was up at, I guess, local time, like 12:30 this morning. They finished there in the House at 3:39 a.m., somewhere around that, where they actually certified the vote for Biden. And, and I was up and certified it, and boom, just right after that, there was a tweet and a statement that came out from the president of the United States from, his account is suspended. So it came out from another account, and actually we'll pull that up here in a second, where he's like, "Hey, peaceful transition of power. Don't worry, it's on the way. Trust." Well, there you go. Producer Nikki Barron has it up. We want you to keep it up there, please, Nikki, as I read this. President Trump says, "Even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the elections and the facts bear me out, nevertheless, there will be an orderly transition on January 20th. I have always said we would continue our fight to ensure that only legal votes were counted. While this represents the end of the greatest first term in presidential history, it's only the beginning of our fight to make America great again. Don't take this down and keep this up. I wanted to point something out though, right? Because, it's a lot of people out there wordsmithing and everything else. And they're like, well, the president, he's this and that. He said, even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the elections and the facts bear me out. Now, actually reading that in English, what he's saying is, I disagree, and the facts bear out that I disagree. He's not necessarily saying that, anyway, we can go into it. I don't know if he intended to write it like that, but what he's saying is, and the facts bear me out, even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the election and the facts bear me out. What he's saying is the facts bear him out that he totally disagrees with the outcome of the election, which is true.
Yeah,
he totally disagrees with the outcome of the election.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is really clear there too is that it sounds like he is, in his own way, is trying to reconcile, right, with the facts by just being like, hey, they bear me out.
It was some pressure that went to this. We're gonna get to that. It was some pressure that went into this statement and some everything else. You got a lot of people jumping off the ship, literally lots of resignations and everything else last night. But before we get to all of that, now I've been known to cry on air once or twice, but I ain't got nothing on Van Jones, probably the most emotional guy on national TV. But we got a clip here from Van Jones, CNN, and his take on what occurred yesterday on the Capitol.
This is treason. This is treason. This is insurrection. This is rebellion. Period. I have heard people looking at small protests in Portland, Oregon, where people were tear gassed, beaten, kidnapped. And they said, no. Whatever you do to those protesters is okay, because we have to have law and order. We have to have law and order. This is rebellion. It is treason. It is lawlessness. It is unacceptable. And we are on a glide path at this point to having to look down the barrel of possible civil war. When all the things we talk about up here sound so abstract, when we talk about the peaceful transfer of power, it just sounds like something from a book. This is what it looks like when you don't have a peaceful transfer of power. Abraham Lincoln talked about some people want rule or ruin. If I can't have it my way, I'll burn the whole country down. If I can't have it my way, I will burn the country down. So now I don't think that Republicans and conservatives can look at this and say this is okay. I'm calling on all of my conservative friends, my Republican friends, to say, what would I do if Black Lives Matter dropped 30,000 black people on the nation's capital and laid siege to the seat of power in the middle of a joint session of Congress and broke in? What would I say if Black Lives Matter do that? I'm going to say that right now. If Muslims did it? If Muslims dropped 30,000 Muslims on the seat of government in the middle of a joint session of Congress and ran in there and there was blood on the floor and tear gas, what would we be saying? If you believe that we are all one people, you don't like the hyphenations. If you believe that we're all one country, if you believe in law and order, if you're against traitors, if you are for patriotism, there needs to be a uniform denunciation from top to bottom of the Republican Party of what we're seeing. And the last thing I just want to say is this. For Keisha Lance Bottoms, a black woman who was a mayor of Atlanta, when they started rioting in Atlanta, she stood up and she said, you stop it. You don't do this in Atlanta. You don't do this in America. She stood up to her base and told them to go home. Where is the president of the United States?
All right, so Trey Holiday, Van Jones there, always a very emotional guy. and he's also somebody who, although a Democrat and a liberal and everything else, he's always had very kind things to say about President Trump because he worked with President Trump for prison reform. If you remember, that was one of his big things there was prison reform, that he worked hand in hand with President Trump, actually handed him a pen in some of everything else. But, one of the things that Van Jones talks about is that a lot of people who, well, actually, before I pack that up, there's a lot of things going on. One, you got people saying that Antifa infiltrated the crowd, and it was Antifa maybe who broke windows and some of everything else. So I'm following up. I've reached out to all my right wing. It's converged, man. So we got people all over the spectrum. So I've been hitting them up because I want to know more about what they said. But I mean, it's undeniable when you talk about all of these people that wasn't all even if it was Antifa who broke the doors down. I mean, everybody who entered the Capitol, even if you were to go with that, everybody who entered the Capitol, like, come on. One, they all broke the law sitting there entering the Capitol. But one of the things here is that, we're starting to hear these things that these were patriots. These were people who were just wanting to get their voice heard. And then something else that you hear is even with the people who say like, maybe Antifa was there, maybe not, which is, I don't know. We'll see. But they're just like, well, there was a few people there who came to cause trouble, but the majority of the protesters or rioters or whatever you want to call them were there to peacefully protest in the Capitol that they illegally entered. But anyways, this is something that we hear. It is very interesting in taking it back to Seattle protests, our lived experience here. Is that something that people were saying all the time? Is it's like, well, it looks like there's a few people here that are causing issues, but thousands get tear gassed. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think that you're right about that. We saw it play out the way that it actually played out yesterday. Many of us watching it live as it was going on. And one of the things that, we saw in the aftermath was it really felt like the excuses train. I mean, you talked about it yesterday, that it was going to be full of folks doing excuses, excuses after excuses, and trying to, again, kind of bring down the actuals, which we saw play out before us. And let's be honest, they were out there talking about F Antifa, and they were out there with their Trump flags and American flags. It really was majority of the Proud Boys. I mean, if you want to say some few Antifa were there, whatever, but ultimately that just sounded like excuses.
It was, it was some of everything, some of everybody. And we know, like, even the Capitol Hill protests here, that you had people who were out there protesting the murder of George Floyd, but you also had people far right. You had people middle. I mean, so, I'm not going to go as far as to say that 100% of the crowd was just a Proud Boy or just Trump supporter or just whatever, because that's not really how it breaks down. But, but it's these things we see. But people talk about patriots. These were patriots. And we see that all the time. These are patriots that are taking the Capitol, even if, you know what I'm saying, they talk about peaceful sense and everything else. So I want to show you a picture here. Patriot. That's a Confederate flag. Ladies and gentlemen, the first time ever in the history of the United States Capitol that a Confederate flag walked the halls of the Capitol. People are like, man, it's patriots though. This is a big problem that we have in America. These guys right here, this flag right here represents people who were traitors. These are people who declared war on the United States of America. That's what this flag represents. The Confederate flag represents people who declared war on the United States of America. And this Confederate flag right there in the halls of our Capitol. The closest this Confederate flag ever made it was to Fort Stevens. I know a little bit about Civil War history, because, my senior year in high school, I was there at Manassas Battlefield. I worked for the National Park Service. I had an intern there at Manassas Battlefield there in Northern Virginia. And Manassas Battlefield was the home of the Battle of First Bull Run and Second Bull Run. And people who are Civil War historians might know that Thomas Jackson, who was General Thomas Jackson, who was a Confederate general, that's actually where he got his name, Stonewall. You ever hear Stonewall Jackson? Because it was at the battle there at Manassas Battlefield where I was there as a teen. is they were like, man, stand tall, stand as a stone wall like Jackson. Now, I take you down history lane here. But what I'm going to tell you is this flag right here never entered this Capitol. Ever. Ever. And so for a lot of people out there, they're like, oh, Confederate flag or whatever. But it's funny, but I saw Representative Charlie Dent, who's from Allentown, Pennsylvania, who traces his history back to his family going there, and the Union soldiers from Allentown that went to defend the Capitol. And it's funny because, we black folks over here, you know what I'm saying? It's us Negroes over here, and we're like, oh, this and that. It's a lot of white people who are like, yo, my great whatever went there and defended the Capitol, defended the United States against the Confederate States of America to make sure that flag never waved in the Capitol. And so it's not just us today who's sitting here like, what? There's a lot of people whose ancestors fought for the Union Army and defended Washington, D.C. And you see this flag sitting right there, waving in our Capitol.
You know what? This is exactly why the comments from Van Jones are so important, because, again, what we really saw yesterday was white privilege play out before our very eyes. The ideas that President Trump could literally say, we love you, to those who did this, calling them patriots.
That's the flag of a traitor.
Literally.
That's the flag of a traitorous nation right there. You can't do it.
And you go against literally the things that America stands for when you do not call out domestic terrorism when you see it. What Van Jones was talking about, if that was 30,000 Muslims, if that was 30,000 black people, if that was 30,000 of anybody other than what showed up yesterday, the response from the Capitol Police, the response from National Guard and other forces would have been extremely different. And he's 100% right on this. And again, when you're talking about the flag, the Confederate flag, really representing the traitors of America waving in the Capitol, ridiculous.
This is the flag. Let's be clear. This is the flag of traitors. This right here is the flag of traitors. This is the flag of people who declared war on the United States of America and got their motherfucking ass whooped. This is the flag right here that's in the United States Capitol. You serious?
Right.
And this is what I'm saying is like people sit there and all the excusionaries come out right now. All the people want to make their, these are patriots. These are just peaceful people that are there. Well, you know what? Symbols matter. And this is a powerful fucking symbol right here. This symbol right here, this is a powerful symbol right here. This Confederate flag never reached the U.S. Capitol. But yesterday it did.
You know what? Omari is absolutely right here. And the passion behind it is clear. Because when we talk about U.S. history, there's not enough detail that really goes to the masses for them to fully understand the minutia that took place there. When we talk about the Union Army, it was not a black or white issue. It was the defense of the United States of
America.
Literally uniting the states. When we have what we saw yesterday and when we have that flag waving around in the Capitol, therein lies the disunion of the United States. That right there is it right there.
What I'm saying is it's the ignorance. It's the ignorance of us as a people. It's the ignorance of us as Americans. You don't even realize where else would it be? Where else would it be? Could you imagine after World War II someone running through the halls with a German flag,
right,
or a Japanese flag or something like that? You know what I'm saying? Could you imagine that? And you know what? People get the defense of being patriots. Nah, y'all got your ass whooped. Let's be clear. And you're able to sit here and go and wave this flag and find some defense and everything else. Y'all got your ass whooped. Tecumseh Sherman went there, burned Atlanta to the ground, gave it to President Lincoln for Christmas gift. Y'all got whooped up on that. And the fact that this is these people, and I went to school down south. You went to college down south too. And it's prevalent. And for a lot of people across America and a lot of people here in Seattle, they're like, oh, hey, well, Confederate flag anyways, man, where's the weather? Nah, this is a point of contention, right? Man, people tearing up shit, we don't seen that for a minute.
Yeah.
We don't seen mobs, no matter which way or the other. This is a big deal because it's the U.S. Capitol. But somebody right here, and this wasn't the only flag, and this picture has a lot of history behind it as well. What the portraits that it's in, it's a whole nother story. We'll go into it, but just the juxtaposition of this flag right here, because the portrait on the right was abolitionist. The portrait on the left, that's Calhoun right there, is a staunch person supporter of slavery, and you got this Confederate flag right there in the middle. So you know what I'm saying? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. And for all these people that are talking about, making excuses, X, Y, and Z, I can bring it down to one photo right here. All these 600,000 Americans on either side of this issue died in the Civil War.
This is exactly why history is important. If we do not uplift the history, how do we learn from it? This right here feels like a repetition. What we were talking about in certain community groups that I'm a part of is that, wait a minute, we've known that racism was never dead. We've understood that it took on various formats because it in certain areas it couldn't be as overt as it was in the past. We no longer had Jim Crow laws that were really disuniting people and making sure that, hey, if you're of this color, you need to be over there. If you're white, you're over here. But what we have seen, and this is what yesterday showed us loud and clear, is that the ideals in the mindset of people with regard to that disunion of people has always persisted, period, point blank.
So let me tell you something here. Let me put you back in the time machine. Here's what people understand. Of all people yesterday, I told you I watched all of this stuff. Senator Lindsey Graham, he won re-election in the last election. There was a tight race down there in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham been in the Senate forever. They call him the golf whisperer because, for the last few years, he's been able to play golf with President Trump and get his way or whatever. But for people that have been watching the Morning Update show for the last few days, I've been talking about the Great Compromise of 1877. Now, what was the Great Compromise of 1877? What happened was in 1876, and it was reversed then, right? Because the Republicans were basically the party that came in. It was a party from the North, the party against slavery and everything else. And the Democrats, and let's not fool ourselves, Democrats, that's the party of the Ku Klux Klan. That's in Pulaski, Tennessee. There was some Democrats. The Democrat, the good old boys, a party of segregation and everything else. So if you jumping up and down talking about you got a blue button on and everything else, man, own your past and your history as well. The Democrat Party was a party of oppression for Black people. Things have now swapped and how it goes in X, Y, and Z. But the Democratic Party was a party of oppression. So back to this story now. Is that you had an election in 1876. So you had Rutherford B. Hayes ran against this guy called Tilden. And this was during Reconstruction. The Civil War ended in 1865. Federal troops occupied the South. And for the first time ever, Black people were actually able to vote. Black people were able to run for Congress. And we talked about that. And you talked about Hiram Revels, who was the very first Black senator from Mississippi. There was a window there in the South where actually equality was occurring, but it was only occurring because the Union troops occupied the South, and the Union Army was basically, I guess, making it as fair as they could for Black people. And so you go into the election of 1876. You've got the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes, and like I said, the Republicans it was opposite. You know what I'm saying? The Democrats, man, that's why you got to remember the South didn't turn Republican until maybe a few decades ago. They were Democrats and then Dixiecrats and then Republicans, right? So you get the election, and 3 states, and you'll hear Senator Lindsey Graham also talk about this as well, but I'm glad that we've been talking to you about this for the last few days. So you got 3 states. You got South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida. And they got a big federal presence there. The Union Army's down there. And actually, for Black people, the Union Army is providing a sense of equality. Well, what happens is that South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida, they sent up 2 slates of electors for the Electoral College. And they do that intentionally to jam up the system. And it worked. And the outcome of that was what's called the Compromise of 1877. And what happened is a back room, smoke-filled room, some horse swapping. Rutherford B. Hayes basically made a deal. If you guys clear the electors and make me president, I'll pull the federal troops out of the South, the remainder of the South, with South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida. And when this occurred, it happened. Rutherford B. Hayes was president. The federal troops, on his way out, Ulysses S. Grant, who was president before Hayes, had already started to withdraw some of the federal troops. Once Hayes got in office, he withdrew the rest of the troops, and you had 100 years of darkness for Black people across the South. You had total disenfranchisement of Black people across the South. That's what happened. That was the Compromise of 1877. And I found it interesting that Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina repeated something that we've been talking to our audience here about the last few days.
1876, South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida sent 2 slates of electors. They had 2 governments, by the way, and we didn't know what to do. Why did South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana do it? To hold the country hostage to end Reconstruction. It worked. The commission was 8-7. It didn't work. Nobody accepted it. The way it ended is when Hayes did a deal with these 3 states. You give me the electors, I'll kick the Union Army out. The rest is history. It led to Jim Crow. If you're looking for historical guidance, this is not the one to pick.
So as you see, Trey Holiday, even there, the election of 1876 and the Compromise of 1877, us Black folks was just pawns. The white people down South, Democrats, and that's why I'm telling you, whether you claim a Democrat or Republican, my friend, you all tread on us. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. This is the Democratic Party there that was running the South. And so 1877, they make this compromise. Rutherford B. Hayes becomes president at the expense of the Black vote for over 100 years.
And there we have it, folks. And let me tell you this is why we talk about understanding our history. If you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. It is the true Sankofa method that guides my life, because the truth of the matter is that when we talk about liberation, okay, Black liberation, there has been a constant fight for it. It has moved through governmental bodies. It has moved through organizational bodies that are community oriented, community grounded, and community rooted. It has moved through various sectors and various people that have had to stand up, fight against it, actually take things to court against it, because there's a lot of federal restrictions around it at this point that are not being utilized. And the truth of the matter is that without understanding the history, we always get trumped up again by the details that get spewed about either on major media streams, through now social media streams. And honestly, it's about us picking up books and reading. Lindsey Graham was right there. This is not the way to go.
Yeah. And so I say all of that to say this, that when someone like me sees this image here, this Confederate flag and the capital of the United States of America, let's keep in mind a few things yesterday. One, this Confederate flag never made it to the Capitol before yesterday. Hundreds of thousands of people died to ensure that this flag never made it into our capital. The second thing is that you have to go back to the War of 1812, Trey Holiday, for the Capitol was overrun like it was. You see what I'm saying? So it's fine. These people got these nuances. Oh, look at this Twitter clip. Look at this feed. Look at this and that. But, you know, for someone to sit here and tell me, it's a patriot waving the flag of the enemy. I don't know what country you guys grew up in, and I don't know what history classes that you took, but that right there is the flag of the enemy. 100%. The enemy of the United States of America is what that flag is right there. Without reservation, the Confederate flag is the flag of the enemy, the flag of the traitors, and the flag of some people who got their motherfucking ass whooped.
You have to say it again because it is true. And you guys, to be honest, we got to remember this stuff. And yesterday was a clear indication, again, that the ideals of that traitorism, the ideals of the traitors have actually been alive and well in this country. And this is what so many who have been oppressed, particularly Black people in this country, have really put on our backs unintentionally. We didn't have a choice. When I think about all of the ways that we have had to bear that oppression and bear those ideals and deal with systemic racism, this right here is where they moved a lot of their energy into their jobs, into policy. They've been doing it in this covert, inherent way that has really caused a lot of oppression for many, many people here. It didn't stop.
And while a lot of people were caught up there in Washington, D.C., and you saw white privilege at its fullest, you saw, this is a whole nother show. We would do a special. And I told you this yesterday, that, man, that damn Capitol Police, they need the SPD. SPD know how to display this. That was the worst display of security for our nation's capital, for our lawmaking. You got to think that at some point in there, and actually in there, at the time that the Capitol was breached, the number 2 Vice President Pence, the number 3 Speaker Pelosi were in the building. They got breached. They were in the building, and the security there is like, man, all these people was working together. You know what I'm saying? Whether consciously or subconsciously, because we see other protests over there. Like today, there's big fences, there's barricades, there's this and that. You know what I'm saying? There's no National Guard. There's some of everything else that's out there. These guys is playing a game. But anyways, you might have been caught up over there in Washington, D.C., and maybe you didn't see what happened in Olympia.
So as you saw right here on King 5 just a short time ago, Trump supporters breached that gate at the governor's mansion. It happened about 3 this afternoon, and Drew Mickelson was there. He's been there throughout. What's the situation there now, Drew?
Joyce, nice and quiet back here at the Capitol campus in Olympia. For several hours, several hundred pro-Trump demonstrators rallied on the steps of the state Capitol peacefully. They're very passionate, but also very peaceful. But then right around 3 o'clock, they headed over here, right next to the Capitol, to the governor's executive mansion gated entrance. You can see several investigators still here some 2 hours later. The wide gate there, that's where cars go through. We just saw an FBI investigator on the scene. They're here collecting evidence, but it was the small pedestrian gate on the right side that got broken through. We understand it was actually broken by these demonstrators. Take a look at the video. This was right around 3 o'clock. Several dozen people went onto the property right after that gate was broken through. They were chanting for the governor to come out. We understand Governor Jay Inslee was inside the residence at the time of this breach. This is an area that is surrounded by a fence. There are no trespassing signs that are posted. The governor was in the home at the time, but we understand he was either removed from the property or at least put in a safe location, so he was never at any danger. And the crowd, while they were yelling and chanting, they didn't damage any property at the mansion. No windows were broken. They did not get inside the mansion. And the State Patrol spokesperson just told us that they were able to kind of make their point, and then they left peacefully. But still, that spokesperson called this foolish. He said it was unacceptable, and those who did go onto the property will be investigated and could face trespassing charges.
The safety of our elected leaders is one of the democratic institutions that we all hold dear. Threatening and challenging those institutions, whether it's a person, a building, or a facility, or even the idea of that safety, is an assault on democracy. We are paid to defend that.
So there was a moment when the breach happened that really there was hardly any law enforcement presence. There seemed to be one uniformed trooper. We were told perhaps it was a sergeant who was on the other side of the gate. There had been a police presence around the campus today because they knew about this rally that was planned. But as soon as the gate was broken through, we saw a couple of dozen squad cars from local agencies, the State Patrol. I asked the State Patrol if they thought they were prepared for today, and they said, you know what, we learn something new every time on one of these things, and they did admit, I think his quote was, yes, we can always do better. State legislature comes back here to Olympia to start a new session on Monday. They've also been preparing for some large demonstrations. I asked if this was a bad sign of things to come, and they said, you know what, we'll be prepared. They're going to prepare for a grizzly bear, he said, but they're hoping a chipmunk shows up. But after what they saw today, I can guarantee we'll see a big police presence here, at least for the next few days. Live in Olympia, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Well, there's a lot in there. First of all, the state police talk about not being prepared. I'm gonna tell you, when they came to Seattle, they was prepared to kick the shit out of us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And but they was remember there was a tweet that the state patrol commander, the state trooper commander there in the Western Barricade was like, "Don't kill him, just hurt him up real bad." That's what the state police. State patrol commander there, Western Barricade. Don't kill him, just hurt him up real bad. And these were people who were standing on 11th and Pine, on a public street. Now here we are. These are people that have gone to a private residence. And me, you know what? No matter what, when people talk about they went to Durkin's house, I was against it. When they talk about Warren's house, I'm against it. They talk about Chief Best's house, I'm against it because I don't want you to come to my mama's house. You're going to find something. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm against going to people's houses. But one thing I'm interested in is all the people in Snohomish County and up there in the Linwood Times who wrote a big story about it, about how protesters went to Chief Best's house. I hope you're keeping the same energy right now for all these people that went to Governor Inslee's house.
Absolutely. I hope they're keeping it. And one of the things that he said that was really alarming to me is, hey, we always learn from these things. Well, you had quite a bit of activity this summer to learn from. So for you to be using this as another opportunity to learn, it actually should be the opportunity where you apply what you learned.
They only apply on black people.
That's what I'm saying. And again, it goes back to that fundamental thing, where, hey, they're not really applying it across the board.
They only apply on black people. You're going to sit down there and the seat of government in the state of Washington, and our governor's house gets overran. And they're like, oh, well, they just came. They made a statement. There was no windows broken. Y'all full of shit in Olympia, man. I'm sorry. I'm just coming out the bag today. And I know my mama watching, and I got a lot of demerits and push-ups to do and everything else. But I've been cussing like a sailor. But I'm going to just keep it real. Y'all full of shit down there. You know what I'm saying? So the governor, and you know what? So here's the thing is what we see a lot of times is this signaling. You see what I'm saying? This is signaling. People have been going to Olympia for the last few weeks. They've been going down there. Somebody got shot down there. Olympia is a dangerous place on the weekend. So you're telling me that our state police, and especially the field unit. So when you think of state police, ladies and gentlemen, you might be thinking of the white cruiser over there with the state trooper on the door and everything else. No, they have a field unit, and the field unit is 100% trained to bust heads and put down rebellions. And that's what came up here to Capitol Hill. They got a whole unit for that. Every week, the last few weeks, there's been something there. This very well might be the state police signaling to Jay Inslee, like, cuz we got your back, but we really don't.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Once again, when you have somebody who is looking out for the, trying to look out for the people all over the state of Washington, you have people that have these interests of their own. And to be honest, they don't want a governor who is looking out for everybody. They want to keep the status quo in place. They want to be cemented in their white supremacy and white privilege. And when they get called out, when they get pressed, what they do this. And we see it here now play out right before our eyes. There's no question, about how this is an imbalance in the power.
People in the state of Washington, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you should be outraged that the state police that we support and we pay taxes to allowed the governor's mansion to be breached. No matter where you are on the political side of this, because the next governor might be a Republican. No matter where you are on this issue, you should be outraged that the Washington State Patrol, whose job it is to defend the governor's mansion, let the mansion be breached. And then they got to say, whoa, they just made a statement. They just did this and that. Man, this is private property. And this is the thing, is what we see here is we talk about is when property destruction, property people violate them. You break into people's property and everything else. This is the chief executive of our state. People just ran up in his crib. And when you look at it on the surface, that's funny. They went to Inslee's house and everything else. But like I said, for all the people that's been out here talking about how foul it is that, people go, you go to Juarez's house, you go to Durkin's house, you go to Chief Best's house, keep that same energy. Where you at right now? Where you at right now? They went to our governor's house. Broke in, breached. And where the Washington State Patrol was at, who knows? Like I said, the State Patrol might be signaling Governor Inslee, man, he might need to wear a vest or something. You know what I'm saying? Because clearly they showing him that they ain't got no protection for him.
You know what? This is one of the saddest things, I think, when we think about how all of this is played out. This is why, again, so many people who are actually caught up in the melee of real disparity, real oppression, ultimately, I encourage you to utilize your voice, because what we're seeing play out in our state, what we're seeing play out in this nation is another example of how white supremacy, white privilege gets the pass. We can no longer allow it. And I'm encouraging all of you, because when you have a voice, you utilize that voice. When you see it happening on your job, when you see it happening in your child's educational institution, when you see it playing out in your neighborhood, that you no longer take it and personalize it, and that you go home and you tell your family about it, but that you approach that person head on and you say, you know what, the way you're acting is not right. It's actually unpatriotic. To be honest, that is really the truth. Because we're all here. If you want to call America the melting pot, when America was formed and it was asking all of the people to bring us your broke, bring us your downtrodden, come from all over the place. That's what America was built on. So when you walk around acting like your white privilege gives you some type of ticket to go around and acting like you got some claim to this country belongs to all of us. And that is the truth, period, point blank. So we all have a right to speak up.
Yeah. And, this is what I'm saying is I just hope that all these people are keeping the same energy.
They're not.
Keep that same energy. Let's go and defend Governor Inslee. The same people that went and defended Chief Best, they were like, man, we can't believe it. Protesters went to Chief Best's house up there in Snohomish, and the Linwood Times or whatever it's called is like, oh man, Antifa was here and they did this and that. Cool. That's cool. And I understand that. And I understand where you're coming from. Let's keep this same energy about people going in. They went on Chief Best's property. These people, they went into Governor Inslee's property. Me, not a big fan of the governor, but it's the principle. And that's what I'm saying. Are we principled people or not? Are we moral equivalentists? Are we principled people or not? Are we going to stand on our principles or not? This is what this is all about, And so here's the governor. If I was him, though, man, Jay, I always say that, his pops was there in the CD. The late Frank Inslee, Governor Inslee's father, won 1954, 1955 state championship at Garfield High School. Governor Inslee went to Ingram. You know what I'm saying? Governor is a Seattle guy. So if I was him, I would have just came out and talked shit, to be honest with you. Like real deal. But it's cool. I know he's an elder and all that, whatever it is. But, you know, they talk about they took him to a safe bunker and this and that, everything. Man, State Patrol just embarrassed the governor, man. Made him look real soft. Where's this clip here? Go ahead and play that, Nikki. Governor Inslee.
Good evening. First, I'd like to assure you that Trudy and I are doing well at the governor's residence tonight. We're just fine. Thanks for people who've shown some concern. We know today's been a very tumultuous day for Americans and Washingtonians for obvious reasons. On a day in our nation's capital where we were to effectuate the most important act of our democracy, which is the peaceful transfer of power, it was forcefully interrupted by those who refuse to accept verdicts of the people, verdicts of the courts, and the truth itself. Here in our capital, in Washington, on a day that was to be dedicated to preparing for the opening day of our legislative session, so that we could address our challenges, including the pandemic, that work, unfortunately, was interrupted by similar acts of attempted intimidation. But I have some good news tonight to share with my fellow Washingtonians. Those acts of intimidation will not succeed in any way, shape, or form.
All right, so you got me. You came up on me. So this is Governor Inslee. I was just texting Besa right now, telling her we can keep it real with all of our viewers, that we're gonna go to break and we're gonna come right back with Besa. She's been in agreement. You know, we've been over here ranting and raving, so we don't push Besa back. You know, she on a clock over there. She with the big dogs over at iHeart. So we're gonna take a quick break right now. When we come back, we're gonna talk to Besa. She sat down with Mayor Durkin yesterday, talk a little bit about that interview. And then after Besa, we just got to come back to this. You know what I'm saying? We got to get it out of our system. So we're going to take a short break right now. We're coming back with Besa. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
My parents coming over here as refugees meant that they didn't really have anything when they came to America. Having reliable healthcare and having a reliable doctor was really important. 共同của tôi, trạm y tế của tôi.
我的社区，我的诊所。Mi comunidad, mi clínica.
بلشدة هي بقارها.
My community, my clinic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your man, the Big O. Want to take a moment here, first of all, to say thank you for your support of Converge Media. We definitely wouldn't be here without you. Secondly, I want to thank everybody who is a supporter of Converge Media on Patreon. We definitely appreciate your support. And for those of you might not know, I'll let you know, we operate 100% off of donations. Some donations big, most donations small, but we love all donations all the same. If you haven't done so yet, I want to encourage you to go on our website to whereweconverge.com/donate and subscribe. You click on the Patreon link and you can subscribe for as little as $5 a month. There's higher tiers beyond that as well. And just know that your subscription literally keeps us on the air. Once again, I want to thank you for all your support. We'll just take this as the break. One thing I can say is I'm glad I be consistent. Consistent when I said I don't think people should be going to council members' houses. I don't think they should go to Chief Best's house, the mayor's house, or the governor's house. Because you know what? If Governor Inslee was my grandfather and that was my grandmother right now, I'll tell you, it'd be some hands put on people. Right. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that the Washington State Patrol just let people go right up there into the governor's mansion like that, irregardless if Republican, Democrat, it's the principle of it that, you know, that they've allowed this breach. And you're going to tell me that the State Patrol, with their extensive resources, didn't have no recon? They didn't have no intel?
Right. Absolutely. You know they did.
It's crazy. Anyways, sorry, Besa. And, you know, I know you're the one person, you're over there at iHeartRadio, Cube 93. And if somebody who's always about the clock and being on time is you, so I apologize. We pushed you out your original slot. You know, Trey Holiday just likes to talk.
You don't be blaming me. You heard it, Besa. Welcome to the show. How are you, love?
I'm good. I've been just watching it the whole time, just like, what in the world? I saw this video of a girl, she had her dog watching the TV, and the dog was just looking at everything. Like, I was like, see, even the dog knows that this is some what that has gone on today. Like, the dog was mesmerized. You would think it was like some beef on the screen. So.
Yeah, it was beef. It was a different kind of beef, that's for sure.
I'm gonna tell you this, it's definitely beefy. So basically, let's get into it. I know you got to run here at the top of the hour, so apologies for keeping you for keeping you here this long. But you spoke to Mayor Durkin yesterday. You had about a 30-minute interview. You touched a bunch across a bunch of topics. The clip we have right here, though, is, I mean, you kind of hit her over the head from jump. Like, what have you been up to the last few months? Tell us about it.
From the best. Took my notes. Basically last time when we talked, it was really kind of towards the end of when CHOP finally started to settle down. In October, everybody was trying to figure out what the heck was going on with Black Lives Matter movement. For me, I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on with housing, because a lot of people were getting kicked out and evicted due to COVID. So being that I had not talked to her since October, I simply asked her, what have you done since we last talked?
Let's jump right into it, though. So I haven't actually talked to you since October. So what would you say are, it's been a minute. What would you say are 3 big things that you have done since our last talk in terms of housing, equity, and definitely the 100 million? Because I really have a lot of questions about that.
That's great. So we got the budget passed since we last talked, and we were able to cement in those priorities. And so on housing, even since we last talked, we announced more affordable housing projects. We're also working with churches, particularly in the Central District, to work with them to change their land so that they can have more housing in the Central District and have people come back there. We're working with the Land Trust, as you know, Africatown. We've moved Fire Station 6, so we're working there. So housing is a big push of ours. And we were able to announce some really innovative ways that we're going to be partnering with people in the Central District to bring more affordable housing there. We also were able to cement those investments in the BIPOC communities. And I'm really proud that the investments in the budget exceed $100 million. And so included in that will be the money that the task force is looking at right now today, together with equitable investments in land that we proposed after selling the mega block, and the participatory budgeting, which we hope to get underway soon. So we've made some big changes that now we've got to bring to fruition this year.
Can you guys
All
hear
right,
me better now?
we need you to speak up just a little bit, babe. So your mic's a little bit low on your end.
Is it better now? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yeah, you bring it a little closer.
I might need, so I turned it down because when I record,
No,
I
we
can't
need
have
that
the
fire.
gain too high.
We need
So
that
that's
black
why
girl magic. You need to bring that
That's why
fire.
it's a little different. Sorry. Maybe I should have just used my headphones because.
You are. I had a quick question for you. I think Trey might have one too. It's the mayor, so Trey definitely got a question for you. But I mean, you talked to her for 30 minutes, and some of this stuff is going to be airing tonight on your show on Cube 93.
Mm-hmm.
It's at 7:00 there at Cube 93. So you guys can tune in the basement. This is weird because we never really drive traffic to the big dogs. You know what I'm saying? So it's only because it's you, Base. So we're telling people like, yo, go check out Cube 93 at 7:00. But what was your overall takeaway from your discussion there with the mayor, first time talking to her since the historic town hall?
I think that she was very well prepared with her answers as usual, but I think she did a good job not like doing the whole ring around the rosy thing. But I also mainly just wanted to know what the heck she's been up to. Trey was telling me about how these apartments that they moved, a lot of people that used to be in the CD into, I guess like it's next to a homeless shelter. They don't necessarily feel, safe over there. So I had to ask her about that.
She asked her about it too.
I was like, have y'all heard about this? And she was like, no, I haven't heard about this. I'm going to put it in my notes because my whole thing is, look, if you are trying to move people into low-income housing, but this low-income housing is not safe. I might as well just try to borrow money and stay somewhere that's safe. So when Trey told me about that, I was like, like, let me make sure I slide that in there somehow. And she definitely didn't expect that question, but said that she would look into it. I think for the most part, I am happy with what they're trying to do with the low-income housing, but that was kind of one thing that I was a little bit worried about. In terms of the new stuff that's coming up.
Yeah, well, I think that your questions hit the nails on the head, honestly, Bae. So thanks for throwing that in. And I think as we get more and more clarity from community, that is really where those discussions and conversations can begin to happen. Because without people in the building letting us know what's going on, we wouldn't even have that insight. So again, I think it's important that community groups that are connected to their communities and that are connected on the ground really do have a voice in a lot of this. Did you feel that, from your answers, that the mayor is actually still continuing to deepen those community connections? I know that she's not going for re-election. How did you feel that, she's trying to maybe make sure that the things that she promised are happening in her term?
It's funny that you asked that, because another thing I did end up asking her was, you have all of these great plans. Like I said, how are we going to make sure that it stays? Like, obviously she's not running again. So next year we could have a new mayor, and the new mayor could have a real spicy attitude and be like, nah, I don't want to do none of that. And then everything is gone. And what she basically honestly said was that there's really no way for her to not, or shall I say, there's no way for that to potentially not happen. Like, obviously you wouldn't want that to happen, but basically if the new mayor comes in and they want to change some of her plans, they can. She did say that she's trying to work with more community people to make sure that this doesn't happen, though, because in her eyes this is definitely a step in the right direction. But honestly, again, it's like, as much as she says, as much as she wants to do, because I do feel she's going to do as much as she can before she leaves, because I mean, she's leaving, might as well have somewhat of a freaking hurrah, right? I don't know. I just feel like, being that she won't be there next year, it's kind of just, I think I just really want to see what's going to happen when the new mayor comes in, because her plans have already been laid out. But now it's like, how are we going to make sure that these continue going forward once you're out?
Right. And so one thing I'll say is this, and it's, our mayor is I think it's love-hate here in Seattle. And, a lot of our viewers are kind of on the hate side, but it's love-hate. But the bigger thing that I want to point out to our community, people are like, well, you're interviewing the mayor and this and that. I want to explain something to everybody here, is that we fought long and hard here for Black media to have access to City Hall, right? So no matter who the mayor, whoever is, for Black media to have access to City Hall. And the mayor's office, we've got a standing interview with the mayor every week until the mayor leaves office, so we can hold the mayor and the mayor's office accountable to our community. And irregardless how people feel about this mayor, the whole point, they converge representing Black media, and you see it in how it plays out here with Basin now, and this is even expanding on over in the Cube 93 for the audio portion, and right here, that we have fought for this. We need to hold our executives accountable, and it can't just always be the big dogs like the Seattle Times or King 5 and everything else. That a little old Converge Media as well has a standing interview every week with the chief executive of our city, so we can hold the chief executive, the mayor of our city, accountable, and we can report back to our community.
And I'll just say that I don't care what anybody has to say. At the end of the day, that is a complete win. One of the things that folks have been really concerned with is giving the mayor a platform to spew the sound bites, or taking sound bites from community, redirecting them and making it seem as though those were the mayor's ideas. It was coming from the mayor's administration. But ultimately, when we even see that, we're able to call it out. So I think having that open line of communication is key. And let's be clear here. Let's be very clear and transparent. When Converge Media started and the Morning Update show started, we didn't have that connection.
Yeah,
it took a lot to get to that place.
We waited a year.
And that's all I'm saying, man. That's a win.
Yeah, it was a year to actually get on the ethnic media list for the city of Seattle. It was 1 year. They wouldn't even talk to us. We couldn't even get a reply email from the city of Seattle for a year, but we stayed persistent. And now here you go. We got the mayor every week over here to tell the community what's up. Basa, I know we over here talking.
No, I honestly wanted to add to that because at the end of the day, one of the questions that I also asked the mayor was, you know, she has these 1,400 new homes that's coming out. A lot of people that are low income, child, they've been evicted and they got felons. So I wanted to know if they would have issues moving into these places. And at the end of the day, no shade to King 5, no shade to Como. They're not going to ask those kind of questions because they've never necessarily lived those lives. So they don't really care to ask that type of stuff. So for me, it's like, yeah, you have these low income housing, but all these people that have recently been kicked out of their homes over the last year from COVID, are they going to be able to move in because they have an eviction? People that have felonies from years ago, are they going to be able to move in? Because let's be frank, you move into a normal building, you got issues sometimes. So I wanted to make sure that, yes, if these are low income, you know what comes with being low income. So what problems are these people going to have? And she said they should not have any issues. So we'll see what happens. But again, when people say, oh, why are you interviewing the mayor? So we could hold her accountable. Nobody else is going to ask her that. Who?
Yeah, let me say this too, Basa. I really think it's about getting things on the record. As one of my mentors, Don Mason, said, she said, look, we have our own media. We have our own archives right now with Converge Media. We're able to go back in the archives and say, wait a minute, we got the mayor on record saying this, so we can actually identify when the gaps transpire. We can pinpoint where it's coming from because of our own archives. We don't need to go to King 5. We got our own. And that's also part of it, is getting things on record.
Right. And can you put me here solo on the camera? So I just want to look into the camera here because somebody commented and said that I keep cutting you off. So let's go to Trey. So I'm now passing back over to Trey for additional comment. And if I've cut you off, I apologize. Do you have anything additional to add?
You know what? It's just a passionate day and it's all good. But ultimately, I'm glad that Converge does have this standing meeting with the mayor because honestly, it is about getting that record. And Basa, I'm glad that you're a part of it because I know that you're going to be coming with those tough questions and making sure that, you know, the mayor does not slip and slide. I appreciated your approach when we had her all together. You said, wait a minute. I mean, I don't think you actually answered that the way we asked it. So definitely keep that pressure on the pulse, Basa.
Gotta do my part. That's all I can do. Everyone's like, oh, what are you trying to do? Man, I'm just trying to make sure I get the word out for Black people however I can.
Absolutely.
Man, say that. All right. Appreciate you, Basa. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Bye, Basa.
Man, yeah, no, it was a good interview. You know, Basa brings her own kind of swag to the conversation. Basa was very straightforward. And actually, I talked to the mayor about police reform. We'll actually probably be airing that tomorrow about her position. You know, in Olympia, if the legislature works out, there's a lot of legislation there around police reform. And I wanted to get Mayor Durkin's position on it because she talked about it early on, like, oh, we want to reform. We want different negotiations with the SPOG. And oh, man, I should have uploaded that. Yeah, it's going to be interesting tomorrow. I can tell you this, something I've been talking to you about, and the mayor kind of reaffirmed it, was that, you know, it's a big deal down there. What they're trying to do is change the collective bargaining agreement with the police union, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it sounds like a lot of other unions, some of the same unions that kicked the SPOG out of the King County Labor Council are the same unions who are now behind the scenes probably lobbying against the changes that they want to make into the SPOG contract. And so, you know me, man, I'm just all for transparency. If people don't want something, just come out and say it. Yeah. Come on the show and be like, hey, we're so-and-so and this union, and we voted to kick SPOG out, but actually we're really kind of supportive.
Yeah.
People should just say it.
I also think that that's exactly where community media comes in, because as Besa just said, King 5, Como, whatever, they're not going to ask certain questions. When we're coming from this community perspective, our community lens, and not to say, because all those folks, are part of communities in their own right. But really, when we're talking about how it actually impacts community, I think a lot of us here at Converge, we feel it differently. And that's why we come with the angles that we do. So I'm glad that you're getting that information about the police reform, because that's a lot. And Kevin Schofield earlier this week pointed out a lot of things that I think, are not actually known to the common public. So it is good that we're going to be able to walk folks through that process.
We're going to follow it up. And Marquis Riley, I know that's all love. That's Marquis Riley was in the comments like, man, I love this. O'Keefe's cutting travel. So my bad, Bay Holiday. You know what I'm saying? People only knew how much love we got. So we're going to take it back here. You got a few minutes, Trey?
I got a few minutes, man.
Okay, so we're going to take it back here to Washington, D.C. We got a few more clips here. This is from the actual election certification. This is what it was about yesterday. It was a certification yesterday that got interrupted, which we all saw. But the Congress, the members of Congress and the senators, they came back together. And I'm telling you, I was up till I was up late, but it was 3:39, 3:40 a.m. on the East Coast when the election got certified.
Roy Blunt and Amy Klobuchar, tellers on the part of the Senate, Zoe Lofgren and Rodney Davis, tellers on the part of the House of Representatives, report the following as a result of the ascertainment and counting of the electoral vote for President and Vice President of the United States for the term beginning on the 20th day of January, 2021. The report we make is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be the president and the vice president according to the ballots that have been given to us.
So at the end of the day, Trey Holiday threw it all yesterday. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they're confirmed.
You know what? And that's really what it was all about yesterday. All of those domestic terrorists, folks want to call them. I'm not even going to repeat that, but I'll call it like I see it. All of them that were trying to stop this process, they were not going to be able to succeed no matter how long they tried to be in the Capitol or occupy the space. Ultimately, the voice of the nation has been heard with regard to this election. And I'm glad that even though it was 3:39 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm glad they made that final decree yesterday.
We put this up earlier. As soon as they wrapped up things there at the Capitol, and we put this up earlier, this was a statement made from President Trump. And also yesterday, though, President got banned from social media, man. This is some right here from Mark Zuckerberg. I wasn't able to print it all the way out, but basically, Twitter put like a 12-hour ban, and Facebook's talking about an indefinite ban. But what the crazy thing is, though, and it's like, all this stuff happened yesterday, so maybe that's the reason. But Twitter and Facebook and all this is 2 weeks left. So it's like, man, to me, it just seems kind of funny stuff. Like if they were like, gonna make a real statement about something, it probably would have been years ago. But now they want to ban the president with 2 weeks left after they've made so much money. Can you imagine? Because, they put ads and all this stuff and promoted tweets and boosted stuff and everything else. Can you imagine? And that's the thing with the media. It's going to be real interesting to see what the national media does, especially if Joe Biden, it turns out to be as bland as he acts right now. The media has minted so much money off of the coverage of Donald J. Trump. They have minted so much money off of Donald Trump. Social media has made so much money, especially Twitter, then Facebook, so much money. And now with 2 weeks left, they're like, we're going to ban this guy.
Yeah, this is why so many folks through political analysts across the nation have talked about this during President Trump's term about how complicit these social media companies have been in inciting a lot of the rhetoric that has really come from the president and really creating those moments and pieces around, hey, how to continue to polarize the nation. This has been a concern, and people have written letters. Folks have gathered together because honestly, there was a real issue here with allowing all of that rhetoric to persist. It started to become a little bit past freedom of speech, but that freedom of speech was what was protecting it, I guess, throughout the presidency. But again, you're right. This feels like another ploy. This is why folks on the ground don't have any trust for all of these kinds of corporations. When you have a capitalistic mindset, unfortunately, what you do is you literally take anything you can that'll make you $1. And that right there is not really cool. And I'm sorry, but my mama called them hoes. Sorry.
Well, I mean, the thing is, yeah, I'm a happy capitalist. I'm not trying to take anything that makes $1. I don't want to throw all capitalists underneath the bus, but I will say this, is that whether it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and all these people, they've made so much money off of Trump, coverage around Trump, whether Twitter, Facebook, around Trump. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be layoffs when Biden comes into office.
Yeah.
You got people, you got talking heads and analysts and everything else whose whole job there is Trump, 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 Trump. You know, and like I said, with Twitter, with Facebook, with the social platforms, these guys have minted so much money, and it's just amazing to see now that in the last 2 weeks, now people want to jump off the ship. And keep speaking of jumping off the ship, I know I'm going a little bit out of order here, Nikki. These were the people who resigned within the last 24 hours. You know, you remember that band on the Titanic? They were like, hey, cheerio, guys. Maybe we should go and try to get the lifeboats. They're like, oh, it's no more lifeboats. Well, we'll just keep playing. These people are the people who jumped over and tried to find a lifeboat. They wasn't going down with the Titanic. White House resignations in the last 24 hours. Stephanie Grisham, First Lady's Chief of Staff. Sarah Matthews, White House Deputy Press Secretary. Mick Mulvaney, Special Envoy to Northern Ireland. And Mick, he done had a few different positions. But Ricky Niceta, White House Social Secretary. Matt Pottinger, Deputy National Security Advisor. Ryan Tully, National Security Council, Senior Director for European and Russian Affairs on the National Security Council. Boy, that's a mouthful right there. You can't even fit that on a business card. But you know, it's just people, they were jumping off the ship. That's why it's like, I don't know. I mean, I understand 2 weeks left, people that, you know, some people outraged this and that. But I think that, what was the guy's name? It wasn't Cohen who went to jail. It was the other Cohen, the economic guy who came with help with the tax bill. And right after was it Charlottesville?
I think so.
Yeah, but right after that, man, he resigned. He was like, man, I'm good. When it was like, it's good people on both sides, he was like, nah, I don't see it like that. He bounced years ago. But quite a few people resigning last night. I'm sure we'll probably see more people resigning. But it's like, it's now, like I said, it's just like Twitter now being like, after we've made as much money as we'll probably can make off of you, Donald Trump, now we're going to ban you.
Well, this is why I talk about it in the terms of capitalism. And it's not to say that everyone who, I think about a business like Converge. I mean, it's not no starch capitalism. Like, hey, we're going to, like you said, we're not even going to take that money, that blood money. My mama said, no, y'all keep it. I mean, literally there's boundaries there, right? But when you have no boundaries, it's clear. And I think that a lot of what those folks who are jumping off the ship right now, what they're going to have to atone for is the rest of their political career. How is it going to look that they stayed on for so long or what do they have to atone for now? Because the balance is there. And ultimately it's shown and it's clear that this president was not the president for all people. And so how did you just sit by the sidelines and allow that to be a part of your everyday lived experience in terms of your work environment? It's something they're going to have to atone for.
All right. So Trey Holiday, you went to Howard University, a historically Black college university. I went to Elizabeth City State University down there in northeastern North Carolina, the rising star in northeastern North Carolina. Well, Reverend Warnock, Morehouse. So I got this overlay right here, and it says Savannah native, Warnock, Morehouse man, and your next U.S. Senator. And caught up in all of this news, which is equally bigger news and longer lasting news because the senator is in office for 6 years. Mm-hmm. Georgia flipped blue. You had Ossoff and Warnock, went to Morehouse, Morehouse College. Kamala Harris went to Howard. Howard. Stacey Abrams went to Spelman. Mm-hmm. And so that myth that we've been carrying, it's always that second class citizen kind of thing when you went to a historically Black college or university. And it's always like people like, oh, why would you want to go there? That's a Black college, everything else. Well, I tell you, man, it's shining bright right now.
Hey, you know what? For me, it always shined bright. And I wish I could have graduated from Howard because I was, to be honest, that was like some of the best years of my life, just being there, being able to submit my college experience there, to start it there, to go off of the ground from there for me, my first year of college, and really cemented it for me. So I've always been able to carry that badge of pride. Be honest, I thought, I didn't graduate, so I'm not technically alumni. And the people were like, no, you went there, you're alumni. I said, you ain't got to tell me twice. I got all my Howard gear at this point. Howard alum, absolutely. Because you know what? It's always been a badge of honor for me. So I never accepted anybody being like, well, that class is less than, or, those kind of colleges. Are you sure you wanted to? No, because let me tell you something. There is nothing better than being a person who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, being 6% of my population around here, 6% of my state, always being surrounded by a bunch of white faces or non-Black faces, being that chocolate chip in the sugar cookie, as I used to say it. Yeah, and when I go straight to Howard and I get the love and the experience to be growing with people that look like me, to be taught by people that look like me, man, you're going to have me get emotional today, man, because I never accepted no second class college experience because I was at a HBCU. I'm telling my son right now, find the HBCU that you want to go to that does have a strong basketball program. I'm constantly injecting that into his mind because I want him to understand that there is a stark difference from when you grow up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's not down south. We're not in Atlanta. We're not inundated with a bunch of Black brilliance. We got to find it in our community. We got to stick together. We got to find ways to be connected and be relational and do work together so that we can come up from the ground up. And to be honest, that HBCU experience cemented that for me. Oh, hands down, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I got my start. Well, my start here at Garfield High School, right in the Messenger. But for years I was there. WRVS 89.9 ECSU college radio there in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. You know what I'm saying? I used to host some shows there. That's where I got my start. And what's interesting? Not to deviate too much, but it's interesting is people are always like, man, when you were covering the protests, it was like nonstop commentary, X, Y, and Z. When I was on the radio, college radio, WRVS in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, I played football, but for basketball, I did play-by-play and color commentary. I did that for 2 years and some other stuff. And then went on from there to the Basketball Network, Hoops TV, and One, and everything else. And so covering the Seattle protests, I go all the way back to that Black college radio experience where I used to be there. It's just play-by-play. Okay, now here come the police in the gas mask. If they tap out the officers on the bike, then we know it's a change of posture. They've been tapped out. It's the same as Johnson inbounds to Smith. They take it across half field. He shoots a layup. You see what I'm saying? So, right here, if we've made a difference in Seattle in our coverage, man, it goes right back to our Black college experience at Elizabeth City State University, WRVS.
You know, and I also got to say, too, when I think about my community work right here in Seattle, to be honest, so much of it was cemented while I was at James A. Garfield High School. Absolutely. Because I always wanted to take my passion for theater, for acting, to the community. And that's what we did at Garfield. And then I took that same passion with me when I went to Howard University, and I worked with a local group. It was called Camp Moss Hollow. And shout out to you guys out there in DC. I was out there again, connecting with community. So you know what? Oh, you and I have always been who we are, thorough lines through and through, man. When you look at our history, it shows it, man. It's proven.
The little engine that could. This is a story. It actually just got bumped for the last few days. It hasn't gotten bumped, but you know, it got bumped because of breaking news, not because of how important it is. We want to sit here and we want to talk about the passing of Judge Charles V. Johnson, retired June 11th, 1928, passed December 29th, 2020. And Judge Johnson, I mean, when you talk about an icon, when you talk about the shoulders that people stand on and some of everything else, this is man, the passing of an iconic member, when we say of our community, but also somebody who impacted the judiciary of the Seattle Municipal Court and other court systems here in the state of Washington, and just was the epitome of excellence on the bench.
Well, you know, once again, I think that that's another, you know, his career, another example of Black brilliance, you know, working to get to the position of judge, making sure that his judgment stayed balanced. And he had that community rooted mindset, to be honest. And again, you know, sending so much love and condolences to the family. When we lose a major figure like that in our community, it definitely rocks us. And you're absolutely right about the importance of that and how breaking news has bumped it. But it definitely stays important to all of us here.
Yeah. And, you know, reach out to the mayor's office because, you know, Judge Johnson had a big impact on the city. And actually the mayor had actually in the city of Seattle had issued a statement. Today, my thoughts are with Judge Johnson's family, friends, First AME church community, and the thousands that he impacted through his leadership on local and national boards and committees who are mourning his passing. He is forever remembered and distinguished of a champion of justice, a pillar of the community, and a Seattle legend. So, you know, that was a mirror. And it's important. You know, this is the thing is like something happened in the community. It's like, yo, what's up? Somebody done died in our community. What you got to say about this? You know, but I mean, they had already put something together. And actually the mayor and quite a few people downtown, whether it's the municipal court, superior court, city administration, there's a lot of people who hold Judge Johnson and his legacy in high regard. He was a mentor for so many people.
Once again, allowing his brilliance to be spread to create generations of leaders. As Miss Dawn Mason says, leaders create more leaders, and Judge Johnson did just that.
Yeah. No. Let me see what else we got. One. We went long here, so I don't know. Is producer Nikki Barron's back there? If I can get the nod on, we ain't gonna have you do the whatchamacallit today. But I got a video in here. If they didn't take it out, I thought it was important. And if we thought we had enough time, we definitely didn't fit it within the show. Nikki called it out. She was like, "Oh, you're gonna go long." I said, "No, we're not gonna go long. We're gonna get it in 1 hour." Nikki was like, "No, you gotta go long." Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Nikki, I said, you were like, "Oh, you gotta go long." I said, "I'm gonna get it in 1 hour." What'd you say?
I said, I think we need to move some of this to tomorrow.
Well, since we're, you know, and we talked pre-show, I was like, "No, Nikki, we're gonna move everything." And what did I tell you though, Nikki? I said we're gonna be good as long as Trayana don't get on a rant.
I'm pretty sure you led the rants today.
Oh, I led the rants.
What show have you been watching? No,
I was like, as long as Trey Holiday don't go long on the rants, then we gonna make time. But man, we've blown past it. Oh my goodness.
See how you do. You see how he does us, Nikki. You know it wasn't me. Thank you.
All right, Nikki. Well, we're gonna play this one today, and we're gonna end the show with it. Thank you. So Trey, and this is something right here. If I can get this camera, this is something right here. It is crazy because I wanted to play this 2 days ago. Then I wanted to play it yesterday, and we're gonna play it today. This is a clip from C-SPAN, and yes, I switched from ESPN to C-SPAN. And so there's a clip here from C-SPAN. I thought it was very timely as to what's going on right now in America. And it's good that it's played today, because at the top of the show, for people that are still with us, when we talked about that history lesson back in 1876 and 1877 that led to the compromise of 1877 and the withdrawal of Union troops from the South, and that 100 years of darkness of just about total disenfranchisement of Black people in the South in America, I thought that I would play this video here, and it's about 4.5 minutes, that I came across on C-SPAN, and it talked about the history of early Black legislators, and these legislators were there, and they were there in the Congress and the Senate during Reconstruction, and of course when the Union troops left the South, and this compromise that we were the bargaining chip. That darkness was there for 100 years. But just want to give a historical look back that we talk about Warnock today, but he wasn't the first.
Each week, American History TV's American Artifacts explores the history of the United States through objects. Up next, we visit Capitol Hill to talk to House historian Matthew Wasniewski and House curator Farah Elliott about the history of African Americans in Congress in the 19th century, and to see a selection of artifacts from the House collection.
The story of how African Americans come to Congress in the 19th century is not one that a lot of people are familiar with. We actually had 22 African Americans serve between 1870 and 1901, 20 in the House, 2 in the Senate. It's largely a House story. After Lincoln's assassinated, President Johnson takes over and has even more lenient view than Lincoln of how the southern states are going to be readmitted. And he's pushed constantly by the radical Republicans. And in a very short period of time, roughly 4 or 5 years, they pass a series of constitutional amendments and also laws that bring about the equality of African Americans in the South. And that starts in early 1865 with the passage of the 13th Amendment, and that's ratified later that year, banning slavery, outlawing slavery once and for all in the U.S., but then followed up by some major legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which extended citizenship rights to the freedmen, and then subsequently constitutional amendments like the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed citizenship rights, the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed voting rights, and then also a series of Reconstruction acts that divided the South into military districts and gave power to Union generals to run those districts politically, essentially, to set up elections and to ensure that African Americans could come to the polls under the new laws and amendments that had been passed. The first African American who is elected to the House and seated in the House is Joseph Rainey of South Carolina in December of 1870. And following him are another 19 African American members throughout the course of the 19th century. Rainey wasn't actually the first African American in Congress. That distinction went to Hiram Revels of Mississippi, who was elected by the state legislature, as senators were back in the 19th century, and he came into Congress in early 1870. The high point in terms of the number of African Americans is the 43rd Congress, mid-1870s. There's only 6 or 7 African Americans in Congress at that point. So they're really too small of a group to drive any kind of legislative agenda. So they tend to give very eloquent speeches about some of the major bills, like the 1875 Civil Rights Act, which, again, is a piece of legislation not many people think about today. When you think Civil Rights Act, it's the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And what that bill in 1875 would have done is essentially the same thing that the 1964 bill did. It would have granted equality in accommodations. in public travel, and also in schools. And a lot of these African Americans from the South, from South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, got up and spoke on behalf of this bill, and particularly the education provision, which would have provided an equal playing field. And that provision, sadly, is stripped out of the bill at the very end of the Congress.
This is a 1907 print that was made of all, it's called Colored Men Who Have Served in the Congress of the United States. And it is really a testament to the persistence of hope in the African American community for participation in public life. It's done in 1907, and it's gonna be another 2 decades before an African American returns to Congress. And this print was done sort of as a memento. In fact, the way it's done is this very popular method of showing a lot of things on a page. It's almost done as if it's a scrapbook or a photo album in sort of recognition of those things that had happened. It was printed in DC. We acquired it in DC. It may never have left the nation's capital, unlike black representation at the time that it was printed.
Never left the Capitol, unlike black representation. 100 years.
Clearly. I mean, that right there is a great summarized history lesson for all of us. Again, being cemented in our history helps us understand how to move forward, so we're not making the same mistakes. What he just said there was, if that bill was passed in 1875, it would have essentially been the same bill that was then passed 100 years later. So here we are, again, the representation matters, man. It's clear.
Well, I mean, I always like to, I studied geology in college, but I should have minored in history because for sure, my mom and my dad, they're both just historians, 100%.
Yeah.
But always like to be able to bring a historical perspective, and it's great, And there's Senator Tim Scott. He's a Republican, black senator from South Carolina, and of course we got Warnock there from Georgia. But it's good to throw back, and people know that left uninterrupted, imagine what could happen.
Wow.
And like I said, go back, read up on the compromise. If you put in Google the compromise of 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You can read about it, and just something else, a slate of electors and people objecting and a compromise being made. And of course, we were the pawns in the compromise. But guess what, Trey Holiday? Just like Maya said, still we rise.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we see today, we don't want to be the pawns no more. We're not going to stand for it.
Say that. All right. So tonight, 7:00, one more graphic. If you're back there, Nikki, Nikki Barron, we got, there it is. Clapback coach. Woo, the clapback tonight. Can you imagine 7:00 tonight? Mike Davis, Julia Jesse, the clapback is going to be ferocious. They're talking about they want the big O on there. I'm like, man, I'm tired. But tonight, 7:00, clapback culture is going in. They're talking about a lot of stuff you could imagine. Julia Jesse's actually there in DC. She joined us yesterday live on the coverage there. So I want to invite everybody to tune in for that. Any last words for everybody, Trey Holiday?
You know what? We've been through a lot, y'all, a lot. So I just hope that y'all are remembering to keep your peace and joy on the inside. Peace is what you're made of, and nothing can disturb it. Remember that.
All right. So, man, on behalf of our incredible staff here, including all your D. Alessandro, whose birthday was a few days ago, we celebrated, and we're keeping late. She's probably gonna run down there, and hopefully she don't find a ticket on her car. Want to say thank you. We'll catch you guys at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And until then, peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.